Splatterhouse 2 is a side-scrolling 2D beat-em-up which sees our masked hero Rick punch, kick, slide, swing, throw and shoot his way through 8 levels of gore-filled violent action in order to save his girlfriend Jennifer. My experience of this game began back in the early 90s when it was bought for me from Bolton Computer Centre. At the time I had my choice of any game in that shop, but once I saw the box art of Splatterhouse 2, read the synopsis on the back and viewed those screenshots, bearing in mind I'd never heard of the series, never read any reviews or even played the prequel, I was totally sold. But even all this, coupled with me reading the instruction manual repeatedly on the car ride home, could prepare me for what awaited me when I put that cartridge in my Mega Drive and hit that power button. From the opening screen, the game teases what awaits you with a wide panning shot of a dark, rain-soaked, gloomy horizon. It's like this area hasn't seen sunlight for years and death is absolutely rife everywhere. As the camera pans across, you see the remains of a mansion. Now, I never gave much thought to this until I played the first game several years after, which ends with the West Mansion, aka the Splatterhouse, burning to the ground, so this is obviously the remains of that mansion. As you continue along the horizon, a series of unidentifiable creatures come into shot, wrapped in brown sacks hanging from their necks from ropes attached to these sickly brown dead trees. The rain, rolling clouds and lightning lead you to a second mansion which dominates the skyline, and just before the image fades to black we briefly see an up close shot of one of these hanging creatures, its wide eye peering out from the sickly brown sack it's wrapped in. Like all good sequels, Splatterhouse 2 takes what worked well in the original and builds on it. While graphically it could be argued that it takes a downgrade over its arcade and FM Towns predecessor, it's certainly a graphical improvement over the TurboGrafx 16 version, which, although fun, had its limitations. Graphically, Splatterhouse 2 is a grotesque and gorily gorgeous game. Sprites are large, detailed, with every gory death of Rick's adversaries wonderfully animated in all its gory glory. Backgrounds are dark and foreboding, with a toxic colour palette of dark browns and sickly reds, which give an overall dirty and grimy feel to the world that you're fighting through. I personally really like how the backgrounds are used to create a sense of depth and scale, from the woods in the misty distance in level 1 to the pitch black backgrounds in level 2 that then suddenly become filled with pained ghostly faces, to the lake in level 4, which seems to expand into the distance for miles that you send your enemies flying out to with a swing of your oar, to the mangled rotten trees and seemingly endless woods silhouetted by the crashes of lightning seen through the windows, to the seemingly endless darkness in the library in level 5 where you're expecting something to burst out from behind a bookcase or from the darkness, to the screaming memes that burst out of those glass tanks in the background with a shriek, which, even though you can see it coming a mile off, is still quite the pants-soiling experience the first time it happens, and it really makes me think personally that the creators of Resident Evil played this and thought, ah yeah, we can use that. To the moment where you're escaping the infinite void of the Land of the Dead in level 7, which has a seemingly infinite stream of tortured souls fading into the distance. All these elements create a real sense of isolation, scale and atmosphere. It gives you a sense of endless depth that makes it feel like Rick is surrounded on all sides by the evil that he's fighting. You get the feeling that, when playing, anything can appear from anywhere and attack you. Another aspect I really like about the backgrounds is how they can be implemented when you're dispatching your enemies, be it by splatting them against the wall, courtesy of a swing of your metal iron bar, which results in their remains running down the wall, which is a nice nod to the original, to sending them flying out into the distance of that vast lake, following a swing of your recently discovered ore, which always makes me think of a Wile E. Coyote cartoon when he falls off the cliff. Other small graphical details which I really like include, in level 1, where this zombie aimlessly walks into a pit of boar worms, which do look uncannily like chest bursters. In level 2, the ghostly faces that briefly appear in the background when you land a hit square in the eyes of the end of level boss, who always used to freak me out when I was younger, as it did look uncannily like one of my neighbours growing up, although my neighbour didn't have bulging eyes, pulsating head and projectile vomit. In level 3, where the screaming Mimi jumps back into that deep puddle and waves to you as he sinks to his death screaming, it's like he'd rather kill himself than face you. And everywhere you look in level 3, there's the remnants of the screaming mimes floating down the river and in these puddles. And when you get to kill the end of level boss, the blood splats on the screen and runs down, obscuring your view. That's fourth wall breaking. In level 4, when you swing the oar and hit the enemies, sending them flying out into the distance of the lake to their watery death with a small little splash. Now I know I've already mentioned this, but it's such a cool effect, I think it warranted another mention. And later in level 5, when you throw a decapitated head at a zombie, rather than killing it outright, it cuts it in half and the top half comes scuttling towards you trying to take a chunk out of you. Also, at the end of the level, throwing a decapitated head at the zombie controlling the lever sends the zombie flying off screen, but its arm's still there clutching the lever. Gameplay wise, Splatterhouse 2 copies and pastes the gameplay from the original. The controls are simple and straightforward, consisting of moving left, right, jump and attack. Pressing down both ducks and picks up a weapon, and pressing up makes Rick look away and pick up a weapon that's in the background, although I've always thought it looks like he's taking a piss when he does this. Controls are responsive, which means anyone, even those new to the franchise, can pick it up and play it and be familiar with the controls by the end of level 1. There is a slide attack, which will need some practice in order to get the hang of it, as it is rather unforgiving if you do get it wrong, and this can lead to you taking some unnecessary damage. Every attack Rick lands feels powerful, with the hit detection being accurate, which results in enemies meeting their graphic, gory, splattered demise. Your health bar consists of 4 hearts, which live in the bottom left of the screen. Each hit you take costs you a heart. When you run out of hearts you die and it's back to the start of the level or the last checkpoint. You start with 3 lives represented by 3 terror masks in the top right of the screen. When those are used up, you're greeted by a continue screen, the password for the level, and the choice whether to try again or give up. Splatterhouse 2 has 3 difficulty settings: normal, difficult and games master. No easy mode, no gentle introduction. There's also a password option on the title screen where inputting a specific 4-part password will grant you access to a specific level. Fun fact, the inclusion of passwords to access levels 6, 7, 8 were included in Namco's cheat section in the 1990s kids TV show Bad Influence, which I think was fantastic, as Splatterhouse 2 is anything but a kids game.
Hello again, slimy furtlers. Namrud here at the back door with more hints and tips. Now say after me. Aid, Nai, Ra, Lakar. Louder. Aid, Nai, Ra, Lakar. Now look out of the window. Is it raining? No, of course it isn't, because Aid, Nai, Ra, Lakar is a cheat for a Jurassic game on the Mega Drive called Splatterhouse 2. At the beginning of the game, you can enter passwords to jump to later levels. Now don't tell anybody else these codes. So, Aid, Nai, Ra, Lakar gets you to level 6. This code will get you to level 7, and this code will get you to level 8. So that's Aid, Nai, Ra, Lakar.
The more you play Splatterhouse 2, the more you'll become familiar with the level layout and the pattern that the enemies attack. Once you have these memorised, you'll be able to breeze through the game in under an hour. However, the game can be quite unforgiving until you well and truly mastered these aspects, and you'll find yourself arriving at certain points knowing full well that you're not going to be able to progress because you've simply not got enough health to defeat the awaiting boss, which you know will cost you at least 2 or 3 hits in the process of defeating them. However, this doesn't mean that the game has limited replay value, and you'll definitely be returning to the mansion for another session of gory goodness. Branching paths, speed runs and no-hit completions are all reasons for you to keep coming back to this game. Splatterhouse 2 is also a horror film fan's dream. The game designers were clearly huge horror film fans, and this is more than apparent as you make your way through the game and see all the horror film nods and winks. The game lovingly references Alien, Deadly Spawn, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Piranha, The Fly, The Thing, Evil Dead 2 and The Burning. To be a horror film fan in 1992 and seeing these references must have been mind-blowing. The sound effects of Splatterhouse 2 perfectly complement the grotesquely gorgeous graphics. Shrill screams from the screaming mimes which sound like they're screaming help. Crashes of lightning, the eerie and maniacal cackling laugh of the terror mask and the piercing and haunting screams of Jennifer. All these add to creating a haunting and tense mood as you make your way through the game. These are sounds that get under your skin and really do create a feeling of trepidation. The music of Splatterhouse 2 is also fantastic. Each level's music is eerie, atmospheric, and creates a real sense of unease and foreboding as you make your way through each of the 8 levels. A great example of this is the music played at the start of each level, which creates a sense of apprehension even before you begin the level. It makes you ponder whether you actually want to proceed or not, as you're not sure if you can handle the horror that awaits you beyond this screen. It really does create a sense of fear and trepidation, which is even more impressive considering the Mega Drive's sound limitations compared to that of, say, the SNES. Another fantastic example of this is the music that plays over the pre-title screen sequence. This eerie yet rousing score, coupled with the slow panning shot of the seemingly endless horizon and hanging corpses of unidentifiable creatures, which finishes at the new mansion, really gets you charged and fired up to press that start button and commence your blood-soaked battle. The only aspect of the sound that I wasn't keen on is Rick's chant as he breaks the seal and releases Jennifer's soul. To me personally, it sounds like you can clearly hear him say gobble gobble. So it comes across like he's trying to summon some sort of Mayan turkey god rather than the soul of his girlfriend. The sound of the shotgun I also feel is a bit limp. What we get here is not so much the sound of a boomstick, more like the sound of a person clearing their throat. Some sound with some real power behind it was much needed here to make you feel really empowered and that you have a weapon that is going to do some serious damage. Now I know the Mega Drive wasn't renowned for its sound capability, but surely we can do better than this. Also, some sound would have been nice from the ram's heads as it attempts to throw up its vile green vomit on you, as you actually get no sound from it at all. But these are just minor criticisms. The music for Splatterhouse 2 was composed by Eiko Kaneda, apologies if I've not pronounced that right, credited as Milky Eiko in the credits. Kaneda also composed the music for Splatterhouse 3, but for me personally, the music for 2 is head and shoulders the better score, and for all you vinyl fans out there, it recently received an official release from Space Lab 9, complete with some amazing artwork on the cover. Splatterhouse 2 was released in PAL and NTSC regions, and there are some differences between the European, North American and Japanese versions. The PAL version runs at 50Hz, which is roughly 16% slower than the NTSC version. Now personally, I've only ever played the PAL version, so I'm used to this reduced speed and slower music. The box art of the North American version has a warning on it saying, "Warning, this game contains scenes depicting graphic violence which may not be suitable for younger players." The UK version has no warning. Another difference is the design of the terror mask, which differs between the regions. The American and European design is much more of a skull-like design, whereas the Japanese is a more rounded, oval shape, and generally a more simpler design, resembling that of a Japanese kabuki mask. However, both versions of the mask are different to the mask in Splatterhouse 1, which is much more of a hockey mask design, although this change in design was most likely due to avoid legal issues from Paramount Pictures over our hero Rick bearing a resemblance to a certain hockey mask adorning serial killer. Both North American, European and Japanese versions of Splatterhouse 2 have 3 difficulty options, but whereas the European and North American versions have normal, difficult and Games Master, the Japanese version substitutes Games Master for very difficult. The amount of health allocated differs in both versions too, depending on the difficulty setting. Choosing normal starts you with 4 hearts in the North American European version and 5 hearts in the Japanese version. Choosing difficult starts you with 3 hearts in both versions. Choosing very difficult / Games Master starts you with 2 hearts in the North American and European version and a punishing 1 heart in the Japanese version. You also start with 3 lives in the North American and European version and just 2 in the Japanese version. Another difference is that the Japanese version has no password option. You get 5 continues and that's it. The difference in version also extends to the game's title. The Japanese version is called Splatterhouse Part 2, whereas the European and North American versions are simply called Splatterhouse 2. Another regional difference is in the exposition. Overall, the Japanese version is more descriptive, whereas the North American and European versions seem to stick to more of a summary of events. There's also a noticeable difference in the character and demeanour of the Terror Mask. In the Japanese version, it's much more supportive towards Rick and seems to want to help him by giving him the power to save Jennifer, and that working together, they can do that. This is demonstrated by it saying to Rick, "She isn't going to die and I will give you the power." Whereas in the North American and European version, the mask seems much more sinister and seems to provoke Rick by saying things like, "She doesn't have to die, Rick, and only I can give you the power." In the closing text, it hints in the Japanese version that Rick's partnership with the Terror Mask may not be over, as it says, "Don't forget, you removed the forbidden seal. See you again, goodbye," indicating that the reason for any future blood-soaked battles or sequels will be because Rick removed the seal to the land of the dead and simply didn't put it back. In the North American and European version, the closing text reads, "And the Terror Mask has left me as I was with Jennifer, but what of the mask?" The mask then disappears into the distance, accompanied by its sinister cackle and text stating, "As long as that mask remains, it can happen again." This suggests that it's solely the mask that will be the catalyst for any future gory goings on. Or sequels. Growing up here in the UK, one of my main go-to game magazines was Mean Machines, which later became Mean Machine Sega. Their August 92 edition gave Splatterhouse 2 a review score of 73%, praising the graphics but commenting that poor animation, slow gameplay, unresponsive controls and poor collision detection ruined its potential for becoming a classic. Each to their own, I guess, but they did include all the level codes in their tip section earlier in that issue, which I guess was a nice inclusion. Some rival magazines at the time were more favourable, with GamePro giving it almost top marks. However, not all magazines were as keen. Sega Power in their September 92 edition scored Splatterhouse 2 a lowly 47%, with repetitive gameplay, it being dull, having annoying music, hard to kill end of level nasties, and it not being as gory as it could be, being justification for their score. Again, each to their own, I guess. If you're looking to pick up Splatterhouse 2 and play it on original Mega Drive or Genesis hardware, then for just the cartridge alone, you can be looking to pay up to £20 to £25, which is roughly $27 to $35 on auction sites. For a boxed copy in good condition with manual, prices seem to range from about £44, which is $61, all the way up to an absolute eye-watering £180, which is $249. The price of Splatterhouse 2 has risen consistently over the years and continues to do so. I managed to pick up my copy last year, which was in good condition with manual, for £35, which is about $48, and personally I wouldn't recommend paying any more than that. However, the most accessible way to play the game, and in fact the whole Splatterhouse trilogy, is to pick up the 2010 remake on the PS3 and Xbox 360. The game received very mixed reviews, and to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of it. But that's a discussion for another day. But what I was a fan of, and what the game does have going for it, is the inclusion of the uncut original trilogy of games as a bonus feature. However, even the price of this game is starting to skyrocket in price. As much as I rave about it, I'm fully aware that Splatterhouse 2, like the whole series, is a niche game, and it's not without its flaws. It's a horror game for horror fans. If you don't like horror films or horror games, then this game won't be for you. I am rather surprised that this game didn't garner more controversy back in the early 90s, as historically, here in the UK, we always love a good moral panic. particularly concerning films and or video games. I'm surprised attention-seeking politicians and pre-Mumsnet, pre-keyboard warriors weren't labelling Splatterhouse 2 a video game nasty and expelling their bile about how this game will corrupt their kids, destroy the moral fabric of society and generally bring about the end of the world. But thankfully this never happened. Also, I've got the rose-tinted spectacles of nostalgia swaying my opinion of the game. As I said before, picking this game up from Bolton Computer Centre when I was 10 or 11, well, my mum bought it for me, and spending endless hours playing it on my tiny 14-inch portable colour CRT TV in my bedroom with my limited number of Mega Drive games, like the effect of the game's atmosphere and sound, has led to this game getting well and truly under my skin, and has led to it becoming one of my all-time favourite games. Personally, I can't recommend it enough. Okay, that just about brings us to the end of my review of Splatterhouse 2. I hope you've enjoyed it, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.